Hello everyone, I am the storyteller, and tonight I am here just to help you relax, to drift off to sleep by the sound of the waves, like the whispers of old souls. I know you have come to this video not just to hear the story, but also to find a deep, peaceful sleep. But before we begin, please gently like the video and subscribe to the channel so I can continue to tell you strange stories under the dim moonlight. Where are you from? And what time is it where you live? Just relax. Let your body relax. Put all your worries down by your pillow. Let me take you into a world of mysteries where the wind and the waves mingle, and unsolved mysteries are waiting to be told. Are you ready? The spook who sleuths my office was darker than FDR's fireside chats and twice as smoky. That's how I like it. Keeps the clients on their toes and the spirits at bay. Name's Roxy Hart, and I'm what you might call a supernatural tomfoolery private dick. Some folks get their knickers in a twist over that last word, but in my line of work, you gotta call a spade, and a detective a dick. I kicked back in my chair, feet up on the desk, pondering life's great mysteries. Like why dames always fall for the wrong guy, or how spam manages to be both a wartime delicacy and the bane of future generations' inboxes. That's when she walked in, a real looker. The kind that'd make Betty Grable green with envy. Are you the paranormal investigator? She asked, her voice shakier than a GI on his first day in boot camp. I tipped my fedora back, giving her the once-over. That's what it says on the door, dollface. What's your tale of woe? She was a maid, worked up at the Wackerman estate. Seems the big cheese, Cornelius Wackerman III, had kicked the bucket under some hinky circumstances. As she spilled the beans, I reached into my trench coat, pulling out the ectoplasmic resonance detector, a contraption that looked like it fell off the set of Metropolis and got jiggy with a transistor radio. Whoa, Nellie, I said, as the ERD lit up like Times Square on New Year's Eve. You've got more paranormal residual energy floating around you than a seance during a full moon. I'll take the case, Toots. The maid blinked, more confused than a coal miner at a debutante ball. I'm sorry. What did you just say? I sighed. Nobody appreciates the classics anymore. I said I'll investigate. Now, scram, sister. I've got work to do. As she hightailed it out of here, I gathered my gear and weapon of choice. The spectral spook zapper, patent pending. I slid it into my left inside coat pocket, right next to the lucky rabbit's foot I'd lifted off a less than lucky leprechaun way back in '47. I adjusted my tie, straightened my hat, and headed out to face the music. The Wackerman estate loomed ahead like the devil's own summer cottage. As I approached, a chill ran down my spine, colder than a G-man's stare. This joint was surely more haunted than my high school reputation after that unfortunate incident with the principal's toupee and a jar of molasses. The door creaked open before I could knock, revealing a butler so stiff he made Buster Keaton look like a Lindy Hopper. Look it up. You must be the investigator, he said, eyeing my trench coat like it might bite him. That's right, Jeeves. I'm here to solve your spectral shenanigans. Now, where's the grieving widow? I need to pick her brain like it's the last rationed can of beans. He led me to a parlor where a dame sat, draped in black like she was auditioning for a walking shadow puppet show. The widow Wackerman, I presumed. Next to her stood a gardener who fidgeted more than a pickpocket at a cop convention. Ma'am, I said, tipping my hat. I'm here to get to the bottom of your husband's untimely departure from this mortal coil. The widow's eyes narrowed. I beg your pardon. Are you quite all right, Miss? Hart, Roxy Hart, and I'm as right as rain on a duck's back, sugar. Now, let's get down to brass tacks. What's the skinny on old Cornelius's last night on Earth? Before she could answer, a vase floated by. Casual as you please. As the vase left the room under its own power, the gardener yelped like he'd just seen Rita Hayworth in the flesh. I smirked, reaching into my coat. Well, well, well. Looks like this shindig's about to get interesting. Hold on to your Homburgs and pillbox hats, ladies and gents. Roxy Hart's on the case, and we're gonna paint the town red, or maybe ectoplasm green. From the parlor, I drifted down the hall into the dead guy's study. My gumshoes quieter than a Nazi spy at an Allied command post. The room, swankier than a Hollywood bigshot's ego, held more books than the Library of Congress after a shopping spree. All right, let's see what my little friends have to say about this joint, I said, muttering and whipping out the ethereal essence evaluator. It looked like a love child between a Geiger counter and a waffle iron, but it could sniff out evil spirits faster than a bloodhound on a catnip bender. The EEE started clicking like a tap-dancing telegram operator. Well, 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 I drawled. Looks like old Corny was into some hinky business. More nefarious vitality here than a ghost's laundromat. As I poked around, the widow Wackerman slunk in, looking like she'd just lost a staring contest with Medusa. Have you found anything, Miss Hart? I targeted her with a look that could strip paint. Listen, sugar, I'm gonna level with you. Your hubby was dabbling in some dark arts darker than a black market coffee bean. Care to spill the giggle water on that? She blinked like a burlesque dancer under a spotlight. I'm not sure I understand your vernacular, Miss Hart. Are you implying Cornelius was involved in the occult? Bingo, doll face. Give the lady a cigar and a one-way ticket to the Copacabana. I paused, cocking an ear. Did you hear that? A low moan shimmied through the room and steadily grew louder than a foghorn with indigestion. Suddenly, a book flew off the shelf, missing my noggin by a hair's breadth. Duck and cover, sister, I yelled, shoving the widow behind an overstuffed armchair. I whipped out my spectral spook zapper. All right, you ectoplasmic mook, let's dance. The room erupted into more chaos than a Keystone Cops reel. Books flew, curtains flapped, and somewhere, a ghostly voice belted out a tune that'd make Stephen Foster, look it up, roll in his grave. I blasted left and right, my zapper illuminating the place like the searchlights at Alcatraz during a prison break. Take that, you translucent troublemaker, I hollered, nailing a particularly nasty wraith. It vanished with a pop, a whimper, and a puff of green smoke, leaving behind a stink that reeked like burned toast in regret. As the dust settled, I turned to the widow, who was peeking out from behind the chair like a groundhog with stage fright. Your house has more spirits than a speakeasy on Saturday night, Mrs. W. You mind telling me what your husband was up to? She flapped her gums faster than a gossip columnist with a spicy scoop. Turns out, Cornelius had been trying to summon some big bad from the great beyond, looking to strike a deal for power and wealth. Classic mistake. You'd think these rich types would learn, but they always want more. I needed more hot poop, so I cornered the butler in the kitchen. He was stiffer than a starched collar in January, but I could see the sweat beading on his upper lip. All right, Jeeves, I said, leaning in close. Time to sing like a canary at the Met. What do you know about the boss's late-night activities? He gulped, his Adam's apple doing the jitterbug. I'm sure I don't know what you mean, Miss Hart. I smiled, all teeth and moxie. Come off it, buddy. I've seen more convincing acts in a high school production of Hamlet. Spill it, or I'll have my friend here do some redecorating. I patted my zapper meaningfully. The butler's resolve crumbled faster than a sandcastle in a tsunami. He babbled about secret meetings, strange chants, and a final ritual that went sideways. Corny had bitten off more than he could chew, and whatever he summoned had bitten back. Armed with this info, I headed to the basement. If this was a horror movie, the audience would be screaming at me not to go down those stairs. But hey, a dame's gotta do what a dame's gotta do. The basement was darker than a Mickey Finn's intentions, and twice as disorienting. My ectoplasmic resonance detector was going haywire, its needles spinning like a drunken ballerina. Come out, wherever you are, I called, voice echoing in the gloom. Let's have a little chat, mano a monster. That's when it appeared. A shape darker than a moonless night, with more tentacles than an octopus family reunion. It roared, a sound that'd make Sinatra lose his voice in envy. I stumbled back, fumbling for my zapper. Well, ain't you uglier than a bulldog chewing a wasp? Let's see how you like a taste of Roxy Hart's special sauce. I fired, the zapper's beam flooding the underground hideaway with more light than a night raid over Berlin. The creature howled, tentacles flailing. For a moment, I thought I had it on the ropes, but one of those slimy appendages knocked the zapper from my hand, sending it skittering across the floor. The monster loomed over me, its maw gaping like the entrance to the underworld's least welcoming honky-tonk. I gulped, backing up against the wall. Well, sweet cheeks, I muttered to myself. Looks like this might be your last curtain call. But as the saying goes, it ain't over till the fat lady sings. And honey, I was about to belt out an aria that'd knock this palooka's socks off, if it wore any. As the tentacled terror approached, I knew it was time to pull out my ace in the hole. Or should I say, my ace from the hereafter. All right, you overgrown calamari, I growled. You want to dance? Let's cut a rug. I closed my eyes, concentrating harder than a code breaker at Bletchley Park. Suddenly, the air around me shimmered and sparked like a Technicolor light show at Emerald City. The monster hesitated, its tentacles freezing mid-flail. If it had eyebrows, they'd have been raised higher than a cat's back at a dog show. That's right, Buster, I said, smirking, my voice echoing with an otherworldly resonance. You're not the only spook in this rowdy scene. My body glowed hotter than the Chicago steel mills working overtime for the war effort. The creature shrieked, sounding like 1,000 nails on a chalkboard orchestra. What's the matter, ugly? Can't take the heat? I taunted, floating a few inches off the ground. Let me introduce myself properly. The name's Roxy Hart, class of 1945. And I don't mean high school, sweetheart. With a gesture that would have made Houdini green with envy, I let fly with a wallop of phantasmal pizzazz that made the basement look like Coney Island brought Times Square to a hot date on a Saturday night. The monster didn't stand a chance. It dissolved faster than a sugar cube in hot coffee, leaving behind nothing but a stench of low tide and broken dreams. As my glow faded away and I floated onto solid ground again, I heard gasps behind me. Turning, I saw the widow, the butler, and the gardener gawking at me like I was Eleanor Roosevelt doing the jitterbug in her studded leather underwear. Now that's a picture. Close your mouths, folks, I drawled. You'll catch flies. The widow stepped forward, her eyes wider than dinner plates at the Ritz. Miss Hart, what? Who are you? I straightened my fedora, which had somehow stayed on through the whole shebang. Like I said, doll, I'm Roxy Hart, paranormal investigator extraordinaire. I just happen to have a bit more personal experience with the other side than most. You mean you're the gardener stammered. A ghost? Well, butter my biscuit and call me impressed, I said, winking. Been haunting this side of the dirt since 1945, when a Jerry and I did the Razor Fandango in Kraut Country, and I missed a step. Figured I'd put my unique secret agent talents to good use, so I started solving cases no living gumshoe could crack. The butler, looking paler than usual, which for him was quite a feat, cleared his throat. But how are you solid and a woman? I shrugged, straightening my trench coat. A dame's gotta have some secrets, Jeeves. Let's just say I've picked up a few tricks since shuffling off this breathing business. Now, about your late boss. I explained how Cornelius had accidentally offed himself during his little summoning ritual. The big bad he'd called up had been more than happy to stick around and make itself at home, feeding off the fear and confusion of the household. So, that's the skinny, I concluded. Case closed, and your house is officially deghouled. My bill will be in the mail, and don't worry, I accept most forms of payment in this realm. As I turned to leave, the widow called out, "Miss Hart, will we see you again?" I paused at the door, tipping my hat with a smirk. Sugar, in my line of work, you never know where or when I might pop up. Just keep your eyes peeled and your Ouija boards handy. With that, I sauntered into the night, my form slowly fading like mist in the morning sun. Another case solved. Another day. Well, not lived, but you get the picture. In this town, the streets are dark, the dames are dangerous, and the dead don't always stay put. But as long as there are phantoms causing trouble, Roxy Hart, the ghostly dick, will be there to crack the case and save the day. Now, if you'll excuse me, I've got a hot date with eternity, and maybe a cold glass of spectral gin. This ghost detective's work is never done. But hey, that's the breaks when you're the Spook Who Sleuths, the final petition of the beast. I trust that your patience and historically proven aptitude for distilling the truth of events from the muddled fog of contentious viewpoints will inhibit you from leaping to a firm and resolute condemnation of my actions until you hear me out to the full. Let us see if I cannot, in time, convince you of my benevolence by offering another perspective on the events which preceded my downfall and which led me to assume this sorrowful state in which you now observe me. A perspective which, I hasten to warn you, runs contrary on many points to those you have, no doubt, already encountered. In exchange for your borrowed time, I promise to inform you of what really happened regarding a topic we can agree truly matters: the well-being of none other than my human host. The rumors you have heard are true. I am soldered by mechanisms far beyond the understanding of the human sciences in an intimate manner to the psychological tendencies of the human mind. I must again plead with you to discard your prescribed opinions regarding this arrangement of living. Any beast or person misunderstood will stand by me, and perhaps you also will join us in testifying that the misunderstood are always critiqued with unwarranted harshness. I have borne the most hideous names hurled at me by those who fear and misunderstand of my role. I have gone by many disparaging titles throughout history, and am only too aware of the multitude of unsavory images attached to the notion of a parasitic relationship. May I suggest as a substitute for this baseless hatred the fondness of a pet for its owner? After all, I do more than leech. Like your beloved animal companions, I am also capable of altering the mood of my host, as you shall soon see. My host was a young boy when I transferred myself from his parents' minds to his. His psychological foundations had been set years before, and I arrived to find a habitat much to my liking. Between the folds of his thoughts, I made myself a home. I had left a part of me behind, of course, in the minds of the parents. Their family had served me for generations, and it was a light task for one as skilled as I in the art of suggestion, and in possession of such intimate knowledge of their inner workings, to fan the mother's insecurities, just so that, while remaining completely imperceptible to their untrained eye, my little whispers achieved nothing short of the legal separation of the boy's parents. I then secured my spot in the boy's mind by magnifying his sense of responsibility for his parents' misery. Thenceforward, the slightest reminder that he was unlovable had him wriggling deliciously in my grasp. It was thus, with my claws sunk deep into his skull, that I ushered him into high school. His emotional trajectory was the most promising of all his dear family members yet. Not a single friend he made the first month of school. The very weight of me crumpled his posture as he wandered, friendless, through the halls. I steered his mood between the scylla of an overly morose disposition, certain to be noticed by peers and trigger the arrival of help in the form of a school counselor or therapist, and the Charybdis of an optimism that would grant him the strength to shrug me off. I would have achieved this ideal flawlessly were it not for that damned girl who transferred to his school and was placed catastrophically in the seat across from my host. Were she my charge, I would have doubled down on her insecurities at the first sign of that cheerful, infectious laugh and blasphemously pristine, consistent mood. If not out of a sense of duty to myself, then out of respect for my colleagues, who work so hard to keep precisely her sort of energy away from the vicinity of our hosts. Before the week was out, the boy was going home, smiling to himself at the memory of their last conversation. Thankfully, I had conditioned him in preparation for such catastrophes. The reminder of the tension that awaited him at home when he stepped off the bus was enough to lull his mind back to its usual state of a miserable hibernation. Yet I knew this girl was no patch of sun or tasty treat. She was here to stay, It frightened me how deftly she slipped under my nose. After generations of thankless, uphill labor, I was faced with the prospect of relinquishing all in submission to her smile. The memory of the warm undertones that bubbled up from deep within the boy at the memory of her smile causes me still to shudder. I irked him. I belittled him. I downright scolded him in my best imitation of his father's voice for his cheek. You can imagine, then, my shock when he steeled his nerve and neglected to drink from the sweet stream of self-pity I offered him. He told me himself that this girl was worth the pain, a revelation that gave me a most unpleasant shock. For centuries, my strategy had been to capitalize on the self-pity of my hosts by maintaining their focus entirely and crushingly on themselves. The bitterness this tactic unfailingly produces kept his parents under my thumb until their separation. I expected the same trap would ensnare their child also. But my suggestions fell suddenly on deaf ears. He had a drive to know this girl, and his deep-set belief that he was essentially unloved and unlovable did nothing to curb his momentum. In all my carefully executed precautions, I had not foreseen his sexual drive would rear its head in this manner. I chastise myself for the mistake. Had I studied more carefully the behavioral patterns of his father, molded my contraptions to better accommodate the boy's hereditary quirks, I might have prevented this disaster from transferring. As it stands, the animal drive to reproduce is, like me, powerful and resilient, and cannot be permanently subdued, only temporarily diminished. He surprised even himself, I think, at his boldness and forwardness, looking back on what he did next. During a break in class came the briefest of silences, pregnant with the potential for shadow-shattering community. And then he spoke, and at that moment I perceived within myself a distinct and piercing horror that stemmed from the sudden realization that my source of life had suddenly begun to slip away, like sand. No, like water, between my sharpened claws. The boy and the girl talked on stools in the back of the classroom, opposite the wide windows, with the morning sun on their faces. His willingness to reveal his most intimate thoughts, including those I had pointedly enforced on him to be the cause of his unlovableness, to this girl, a near total stranger to him, unknown less than a week ago, it frightened me. So I bit him hard on the tip of his ear. It was too risky, you see, to allow a conversation of that nature to continue. They might have begun to discuss me, the boy's negative self-talk, and he might have let the cat out of the bag and deprived me of the strength that secrecy affords. He was still grimacing from the pinch of the memory of some past embarrassment when the teacher resumed class. But the girl looked worryingly at him, and I at her, for I knew the fight was far from won. Before I continue, I feel compelled to address my apparent neglect of the rules. You must understand, taking into account the urgency of my case, why it was necessary for me to inflict more than merely psychological torment on my host. Consider the goal I had to achieve. If the result of my admittedly brash action was the immediate embarrassment, the later regret, and the plummeted social confidence of my host, 3 dimensions firmly underneath my jurisdiction, can the rules really be said to have been abandoned? Even so, I trust you to keep the details of my misstep within the sphere of your knowledge, and mine only. That afternoon, the boy flopped onto bed, and I robotically conjured his usual evening diet of social comparison and self-loathing that bites so poignantly on the teenage psyche. I had just settled in for a mellow evening of brooding and isolation when the boy received a friend request from the girl. Soon they were volleying messages happily like 2 ducks in a pond. I spewed my most horrid concoction of degrading insults in his ear, but the boy took even my most clever and piercing threats and told them to her verbatim as I had whispered them to him. The stupid boy believed my work to be a product of his own imagination, but the untruth of his utterances was instantly checked by the girl, and the secret of my existence was out. I felt the shame and secrecy drain from his mind like the contents of a filthy toilet, all at once unclogged. You would have screamed too if you had been there, your life's work transformed in an instant to shining acceptance and relief. She urged him to speak with the school counselor on Monday, and walked him down to the counseling office herself when I attempted to undermine the urgency of his plight. I found us face to face with my old host, whose emotions I could not comprehend nearly as well from this side of his face. The counselor did not return my fiery gaze, although he noticed me the moment we stepped into his office, but gave the boy a long, sad look. I see what's happening here. Do I need antidepressants, sir? Asked my host. Oh no, just a daily dose of self-acceptance. If I have revealed too much of myself and my motivations, so that you look down upon me as the villain of this tale, believe me now when I tell you I have done so for a special purpose. For do I not also possess those same heroic traits of determination, bravery, creativity in my methods, and consistency in my effort, all in service to the biological imperative to survive and reproduce, for which you applaud and congratulate the boy? What does it matter, really, if my methods are unconventional, my form perhaps shocking to you, my feeding style abnormal? I would caution you against delivering judgments colored so heavily by dislike for the unfamiliar and the unknown. What is the difference between me, who seek to preserve my existence by any means, even the grossest, and him, who takes the opinion of his friend into account before making a decision to the same end and purpose? I assure you, it is a difference, not in type, but in degree only. He fought harder, more ruthlessly than I, and so he has won. I, who held the boy's leash, now cower, packed away and forgotten, in a dark and lonely corner of his mind. He does not visit or feed me, except occasionally, and by accident. My strength is waned, my spirit is dehydrated, my form considerably shrunken. With the addition of communal support, that loathsome girl had friends and introduced them to him. I doubt I shall ever drink from the boy's vitality again. What pains me most is the thought that his and her children will be reared without the guiding influence of my whispers on their young minds. I will be hard-pressed to imitate to his children the voice of their father when they have not been primed for years with the backdrop of his incessant complaints. The boy has abandoned me. I shiver, cold and alone. But you are still here, warm and receptive, believing in the truth of my whispers, attentive to my voice. You will let me in, won't you? The Adventures of Jack and Celine. Content warning. Bugs, fire, darkness. Not for the first time in his life, Jack's Sunday afternoon was saved by vintage pornography. There was a magazine in the dusty antique store, full of printed reproductions of saucy sepia scandals, and he flipped through with a schoolyard grin. "Oh my God," said Lisa. "Don't look at that, you jerk. Hey, you dragged me out to this dump, so don't complain. And I ain't jerking anything. Yet." Lisa rolled her eyes and made that "don't be gross" groan. Or maybe it was the "don't embarrass me in public" one. Whatever. I'm going to go look at armoires and pretend like we're not engaged. Love you too. Jack flipped through a few more magazines, and it struck him how natural everyone looked. No airbrushing, no Photoshop, not like it even existed back then. Their bodies simply were as they were, adequate. Did society just have much healthier ideas of body image back then? It occurred to him there could be real historical merit in formally studying this. And then he wondered how he might go about getting a grant, especially considering he wasn't a historian or any kind of researcher. Oh my God, what am I doing? He set the magazines down before he ruined porn forever. Still, if he had found this, then maybe this antique shop of Lisa's wasn't a total waste of time. He decided to take a stroll down the creaking aisles and see what else he could find. Most of it was kitsch, but when he spotted the toys and games section, his eyes widened. And then Jack spotted her. Celine the centipede. A segmented orange plush, about a foot long, slumped on a shelf. Her fur was patchy, and her one remaining lacquered eye scuffed. But it was unmistakably Celine. Faded memories stirred in his mind. Long forgotten thoughts stretched. A buried history awoke. He recalled a giant bonfire with all his family there. Other people too. Maybe it was a holiday? Little 8-year-old Jack, swaying in the welcoming glow of the flames as they kept the night's chill away, belting out Camptown races and then collapsing into a fit of giggles. And all the while, Celine safely nestled in the crook of his arm, protecting him from all the monsters that dwelled in the shadows. "Oh, wow," he said, approaching the toy shelf. I can't believe it. He didn't notice Lisa sneak up on him. What is that gross thing? Her name is Celine, Jack said, stressing it. And she is not a gross thing. She was my best friend growing up. Oh, that's so adorable. And sad. Adorably sad. We went everywhere together. She was there for me when my parents. Lisa hugged him. It's okay. Sorry, I didn't mean to bring it up. No, I'm fine. It was so long ago. Jack reached out to pick Celine up from her shelf, and Lisa slapped his hand. Ew, don't touch it. What the hell? You don't know where it's been. It's probably covered in all kinds of gross stains and smells and fleas. Centipedes don't get fleas, Lisa. Jack, she said, squeezing his arm. It's not a real centipede. Now behave. I'm going to go arrange delivery of our new armoire. And after that, we can head down to Murphy's for a pizza and beer. Jack watched her leave, and then turned his attention back to Celine. It looked just like her, just like the one he used to have. In fact, she was even missing her third left foot from the front. Hello, Jack, said Celine. Jack gasped. It is you! Was there ever any doubt? Celine coughed, and some of her fur came loose. Are you all right? Time's been a real bitch to me. Let me tell you, Jackie boy. Speaking of which, who's the tramp? What, you mean Lisa? Hey, she's my fiancé. Oof, condolences, buddy, Jack scoffed. Don't say that. I love her, do you? Or does she just have your balls in her purse? I mean, what the hell is an armoire? I don't know. Exactly, Jack. Nobody does. It's made up. She made it up to sound smarter than you. That's not true. Jack heard the petulant note in his voice. Still, he couldn't help crossing his arms and sinking into himself. You know what she sounds like to me, buddy? Jack shook his head. A shadow monster. Jack gulped. No. His voice was tight. Cold memories washed over his skin. Memories of vile things that lurked in the dark, all biding their time to snatch him. Some lurked under his bed, others in the closet. The biggest one, King Grumbler, lived down in the basement of their old house, where the lone, naked light bulb never gave off enough light. Night was a time of horrors incarnate, at least until Jack met Celine. Celine protected him. She watched over him while he slept, and with her around, he actually could sleep. She showed him the light. She was the light. With her on his team, nothing could stop Jack. He felt a dull ache in his chest. Why had they ever parted ways? It must have been in the chaos after the accident, after his whole life was flipped upside down and he lost everything. Yes, Celine said. A shadow monster. A creepy crawly. Don't! A gristly ghouly. Stop it. Grabby stabby! Stop! Jack's shout muted the store. Celine raised her front dozen feet in surrender. Okay, calm down, Spaz. She scratched one of her rear segments. Didn't realize you felt so strongly about it. Although I guess it is pretty brave of you, marrying a shadow monster. Celine, she's not a shadow monster. It just occurred to Jack how much crap was in this antique store, and how weak the lights were. Everywhere he looked, there were dark nooks and umbral crannies. A life-sized suit of knight's armor cast a long shadow down a narrow corridor. But the suit was also big enough to hide at least 3 monsters, if they were real, of course. Jack shook his head. He wasn't afraid of the dark anymore. He'd outgrown it. I don't know what you see in her anyway. I always thought we were better together. We even have a ready-made couple's name. Celiac. Did you just ship us? And what the hell, Celine? Why would you go with Celiac instead of the obvious Jacqueline? Oh, Jacqueline. Celine weathered another coughing fit. You're right. That's pretty. I like it. So, we're agreed then? You're gonna dump the chump and roll with me? What? Drop the slop. Ditch the bitch. Punt the cup. Celine, what has gotten into you? She wasn't always like this, was she? It used to be all fuzzy hugs and warm giggles and whispering secrets to each other long into the night. For all of his worries and all of his fears, she always had an answer. She'd been just what a frightened, lonely 8-year-old needed. But Jack wasn't a child anymore. I'm not leaving Lisa. She's the best thing that's ever happened to me. And that's a fact. Celine drew herself up. Unbelievable. Crossed dozens of feet. After all I've done for you. She shook her head at her neighbors on the toy shelf. I should have expected it. The shadow apple doesn't fall far from the shadow tree, it seems. What's that supposed to mean? Your parents were the biggest shadow monsters of all. That's not true. Come on, Jackie boy. It's your bedtime. No snacking before dinner. Brush your teeth, young man. They were insane. They were. Jack gulped. His memories of his parents were few and far between, but he knew they were good people. Weren't they? All those things, they just sounded like regular parent things. Celine leaned forward and clapped her feet. Oh my God, you don't remember, do you? Remember what? All I remember is you used to be nice. Like that time we had a big bonfire with all the neighbors, and we got to stay up way after bedtime, and we sang Camptown races and laughed, and that nice lady gave me an apple juice. Nice lady? That was a paramedic, you dumbass. What? Come on, remember. Celine started humming Camptown races. Jack remembered working on a project earlier in the evening. Lots of papers, shredded papers, papier-mâché. That must have been it. An art project to show his parents how much he loved them. Only, in his memories, he was scattering the papers all around the house. Celine cleared her throat with another cough and began singing. Grab a lighter and some gas. Doo-dah, doo-dah. Kill the shadows with some flame. Oh, dee-doo-dah-day. Jack remembered. With Celine clutched under one arm and the other arm dragging a gas can all over the neighborhood, he belted the lyrics out at the top of his lungs. She provided harmony. She told him where to go, how to arrange things, and when everything was ready, start your lighter, Jackie love, and give the gas a little kiss. Within seconds, 6 cookie-cutter houses erupted in a huge fireball that rose into the sky, and when bright-hot figures ran out of the conflagration, waving their arms in the air and screaming, Celine told him those were just the shadow monsters. They saw his work, and they had a change of heart. And now they were dancing and singing and happy and bright. And so Jack sang louder too, and he danced with Celine, and he danced much longer than the silly shadow people who got tired real quick and laid down to sleep. Jack screamed. Aw, you remembered, Celine said. About damn time, my little pyro. Jack screamed more. You have no idea how bored I've been since they took you away from me. Jack took a deep breath and continued screaming. Come on, Jack. Let's go murder some folk. Just like the good old days. Jack continued screaming. Blam! A thundering blast right beside Jack. He fell into trembling silence. An old man in thick, square glasses stood right beside him and lowered a shotgun. Little remained of Celine's shelf other than scorched wood and a smear of orange fluff. Ah, dang it, said the old man. You know, I put up a sign, but people don't read. Keep donating their haunted toys and cursed dolls and whatnot. Oh well, so you're fine to deliver it on Wednesday? Lisa asked. Yes, ma'am. You can count on it. That's a lovely armoire, and I'm sure you'll enjoy it for a long time. He shook Lisa's hand and then departed. Well, Lisa said, entwining her arm with Jack's shivering one. I told you that thing was gross. Anyway, guess we're lucky he was nice enough not to charge us for it. Now come on, let's go get that beer and pizza. Speed. Fate. Hi, Buck. Thanks for taking part in the recent Speed Fate speed dating event and submitting your feedback. We hope you enjoyed the evening. Please find below a copy of the comments you left for each of your dates. You will receive feedback submitted about you in a separate mail. Should any of those you said yes to also say yes to you, we will forward each of you a copy of your contact information so you can get in touch. The very best of luck, and thanks for choosing Speed Fate. The Speed Fate team. Buck Tucker dated the following people: 18th July 2023, and left the following feedback. Mandy Rogers, age 37, self-help guru. You said, fun person. Quick smile, bubbly. The conversation flowed from the get-go. Love the curls. She had so much to say and was passionate about her interests, even if they were a bit airy-fairy. If there's one thing I respect, it's passion about your subject of choice. Refreshing to meet someone as firm a believer in destiny as Mandy is. Could talk to her for hours about sliding doors and parallel universes. Would love to delve deeper into her thoughts on escapable fate. Great date. Would you like to meet Mandy again? Yes. Evelyn Pierce, age 35. School teacher. You said, Evelyn is a dark horse. Shy to start, but relaxed as the date went on. I was nervous too, because she's very smart. I felt dumb by comparison. Very impressed by her career. She seems to be a great teacher, very professional. I get the impression she could be successful at anything she turns her hand to, even partnering with me. She has the voice of authority. It just needs to be strengthened. She could broaden my horizons on intellectual topics, and I could teach her about life outside the classroom. Definitely see potential here. Would you like to meet Evelyn again? Yes. Katerina Cruz, age 38, physical therapist. You said. Not much to say about Katerina, except wow. I didn't know Drop Dead Gorgeous was an actual thing, but as soon as I left her table, I felt part of me die, or at least abandon ship so it could stay behind. Her eyes really drew me in. Could get lost in them for hours, not to mention everything else. Her English isn't great, but that didn't matter. Her body language did the talking. Can tell she doesn't take shit from anyone. And with those muscles, you wouldn't want to forget her birthday. Bit intimidating, but that's a turn on. So it's a yes from me. Would you like to meet Katerina again? Yes. Ashley Davenport, age 41, office admin. You said, Ashley is a bit mousy. Not my type physically, but has an air of mystery about her, which is attractive. Not sure why she was at the event. She was an ice queen, and I had to work hard to make conversation. Wasn't very successful. Didn't find out much about her, other than that she has cats and works in admin. I'm not a cat person, but I have a dog who hates cats. so he would probably chase them off if we got together. Pretty sure she just had her walls up. I have a feeling I could get her to loosen up. I am 100% sure it would be worth it. It would be nice to see her show some emotion. Challenge accepted. Would you like to meet Ashley again? Yes, to Buck Tucker from Speed Fate Team. Date, 19th July, 2023, 16:31. Subject, your speed. Fate. Feedback. Hi, Buck. Thanks again for attending the recent Speed Fate speed dating event. We have now compiled the feedback we received from the people you met and have included it below. You will receive the contact information for anyone who said yes, that you said yes to, also in a separate mail. The best of luck, and thanks for choosing Speed Fate. The Speed Fate team. Mandy Rogers, age 37, yoga teacher. They said, Buck was a pleasure to talk with. Very open-minded, and I didn't get the impression he was humoring me when I was rattling on about chakras and meditation. He seemed to be genuinely fascinated. Was interesting hearing his views on the afterlife and reincarnation. He carries a lot of nomadic energy and seems to be as much of a free spirit as I am, even if yoga and mindfulness aren't his thing. Would definitely like to bounce more ideas off him. I promised him a tarot reading if we meet again. So here's hoping. Would they like to meet you again? They said, yes. Evelyn Pierce, age 35, school teacher. They said, Buck is great. He's a lot more adventurous than me. Very extrovert, which is exciting. I need someone like that to get me out of my comfort zone. Raising 2 teenagers as a full-time single dad is not an easy task, so I take my hat off to him. Also impressed by his role as a part-time scout leader, setting time aside to take kids camping and teach them about the great outdoors. That's inspirational. Would definitely be interested in getting to know him better. Always a sucker for a good dad. Would they like to meet you again? They said, yes. Katerina Cruz, age 38, physical therapist. They said, Buck is interesting, man. Similar interest in keep fit, training for marathon. Now, I think he has a lot of work to do, but is good. He has goal to work for. Perhaps he needs some help training. Little out of shape. But I don't have heart to say. Cute smile, kind eyes, love-bearded man. Also interested in his musical career. Must be nice to date with guitarist of upcoming rock band. I think I should like to see this. Would they like to meet you again? They said, yes. Ashley Davenport, age 41, office admin. They said, God loves a trier. I gave him nothing, but he kept on trucking. Bonus points for that. If I was him, I would have given up in the first minute, like everyone else. 5 must have been torture. Really hate this shit. Only did it because my friends signed me up, and I never would have heard the end of it. Whatever. Promise I'll make more of an effort next time. Not that he's going to want to meet me again. He'd probably sooner throw himself under a bus. Would they like to meet you again? They said, yes, to Buck Tucker from Fate. Team. Date 20th July 2023, 11:30. Subject, your speed. Fate. Contacts. Hi Buck. Please find attached contact information for your matches from the speed date event you attended on July 16th, 2023. We hope you had an enjoyable experience and have our fingers crossed. One of your matches will be the one. We've had a number of success stories to date, some leading to marriage, and are always interested in hearing how things go. The best of luck, and thanks for choosing Speed Fate. The Speed Fate team, dressed in his least shabby suit, well-worn blue check shirt, newly bought navy tie, and doused in the least repulsive knockoff Hugo Boss aftershave he could find. Tucker drew a well-practiced smile onto his goatee-framed jaw and slid into the seat opposite his date, the redhead in the white dress, whose hair was tied back in a hastily knotted ponytail and whose name was displayed on the sticker attached to her chest. Evelyn, he announced, clasping his hands together and placing his elbows on the table. So good to see you. I was delighted to hear you wanted to meet me again. I felt we had a good connection, even though we only talked for 5 minutes. How have you been? How are those school kids? Hope they've been listening to teacher across the white-clothed tabletop, past the bottle of champagne chilling in a stainless steel cooler, 2 sparkling champagne flutes, and the candle protruding from a chrome holder. Evelyn met Tucker's gaze and swallowed the lump of saliva that had stuck in her throat. He hadn't thought it possible for her to be more nervous than she'd been at the speed date, especially since they knew each other now. But there she was, eyes darting about, glancing at the people either side of them, beads of sweat visible on her brow. It was going to be harder than he thought to get her to loosen up, he realized. But that didn't matter. In a way, he found her nervousness endearing. They're fine, she said, her voice coming out a whisper, forcing her to clear her throat. They're good. They don't give me trouble. I never have to reprimand anyone. Really? There's not a single troublemaker in the bunch? What age did you say they were? Tucker reached forward abruptly, suit sleeve riding up his arm, and closed his hand around the neck of the champagne bottle, causing Evelyn to jump, eyes darting to his unclean fingers. 14, she said, returning her eyes to his as he took the bottle from the cooler and started undoing the wire holding its cork in place. And 15. No, honestly, nothing like that. I've never had to punish anyone, if that's what you mean. I see, Tucker said, narrowing his eyes as if to peer into her mind. Bit boring, isn't it? All that authority, and there's not a single obnoxious teenager for you to use it with? I find that hard to believe. As a former teenager in a school full of stuck-up bitches and bullying brats, I find that extremely hard to believe. But hey, if that's what you're saying, pop! The cork shot from the bottle with explosive energy, making the nervous teacher jump again. I'll take your word for it. How about your colleagues? They all super nice too? Come on, you can be honest. Bet there's a couple of real shits, right? Get off on tormenting the kids? Probably a few pervs too. Pedo bastards? I know there were at my school. Oh, I know. Can think of at least 3 motherfuckers who deserved to have their dicks cut off, sitting forward, extending his arm, pouring bubbly liquid into his date's glass. He glared as she shook her head softly, almost imperceptibly, and sucked in her lips. He snorted, smiled, a shake of the head as he finished pouring, and moved the bottle to his own glass. You don't have to be so nervous, Evelyn. It's just me and you. You can tell me anything. I'm very open-minded, a man of the world. I know the way things work. I'm familiar with what goes on behind closed doors. In response to his comment about it being just him and her eyes had flicked to the left and right again, almost as if to remind herself there were people around them, though it shouldn't have been necessary, considering how boisterous they were. Don't worry about them, Tucker said, depositing the champagne bottle back into the cooler with a clatter and crunch. What we talk about is none of their business, and vice versa. Let's just focus on getting to know each other. He lifted his glass, took a sip, let the bubbles pop in his mouth and tickle his throat. Effervescent. Evelyn watched him return the glass to the table with dampening eyes and quivering lip, bubbles spinning in the amber liquid in the untouched glass before her. So you're not a mean teacher, and you have no asshole students, and everyone you work with is lovely. Okay, I get it. They've conditioned you well. Turning a blind eye is second nature. That's okay. That can be fixed. You just have to open your eyes, see things for what they are. Identify the evil in people. Acknowledge it. Accept that it's there to be destroyed. And do you know the best way to do that? He crossed his arms, lifted an eyebrow, cocked his head. And no, she said, the first tear escaping an eye and running down a scratched, grime-covered cheek. I don't. Buck, you know, I think you got the wrong impression of me. I'm not a bad person. I treat people well. I don't. I'm not. The best way to do that. He cut her off, craning his head closer to hers, his nose almost touching the trembling candle flame, is to find it in yourself and expose it. Draw it out into the light, like a putrid, rotting vampire. Set it free and watch the havoc it wreaks. Once you know what your own darkness is capable of, you'll be able to recognize it in others. And then you'll be able to do something about it. Like me. It's simple, really. So come on, let's go on a journey of self-discovery. Aren't you drinking? Please, Buck. I don't think I'm what you're looking for. I think we should... Have you ever cheated on someone, Evelyn? Deliberately or accidentally, thinking it was okay because, it wasn't that serious and they weren't invested. No, I never. Have you ever lied to someone to let them down gently, or just because you wanted some attention, to be wined and dined, treated like a princess, to pass the time? Buck, I want to stop, please. Have you ever hit anyone? A sibling? A child? Have you ever lost your cool and lashed out blindly with a hand or a foot? Hurt someone out of anger or desire? Please, so you don't use your authority to punish students. How about something else? Have you seduced one? All those virile young teenagers staring you up and down. Have you ever taken advantage of it? Tasted forbidden fruit? Or maybe not them, maybe one of their parents, maybe a bit of home-wrecking saints and urge. I don't know why you're doing this. I don't know what kind of person you think I am, but I'm not. Have you ever thought about killing someone, Evelyn? Pulling a cord tight around their neck and watching them choke, sticking a knife in their guts and twisting it, enjoying the warmth of the warm, sticky blood that... Jesus, God, somebody help me, please, somebody help me. She screamed, she stomped, she shook, she howled and yelled and roared. Teardrops flew from her eyes, but nobody helped. Oh, Evelyn, said Tucker, after allowing her a moment. I had a good feeling about you. I thought if I could get you to see the light and come around to my way of thinking, we'd have fun expelling assholes from the world. But it's not going to happen, is it? She continued to scream, wrenching and twisting in the chair she was tied to. So he shrugged and took hold of the candle, slid it from its holder, revealed the blade that protruded from its base. The teacher's eyes went wide, and her voice cracked as he angled it towards her throat, leaned further forward, and swiped left. A second mouth fell open in the smooth, pale skin of her throat, and she gasped, gurgled, thrashing more urgently as a spine-chilling groan crept from her soul. Tucker sat back and watched. No glee showed on his face. No excitement. He watched blankly. The knife held loose, the thin layer of blood on its blade, sprinkling scarlet splashes on the tablecloth. If there was an air about him at all, as his second hope for a partner fizzled out, it was one of disappointment. He really would have liked her as a soulmate. After a minute, when Evelyn stopped twitching, he checked to ensure his shirt and jacket hadn't been soiled, then slid the candle knife back into its holder, licked his forefinger, extinguished the candle's flame, pushed his chair back, and got up. He took a napkin from the table, dabbed at his mouth as he stepped back, watching his scuffed loafers, careful not to step into the blood that had pooled beneath the chair behind him. The blood that had oozed from boring, not mysterious Ashley. To his left, bound and gagged, Katerina lunged her upper body towards him, impressive arm muscles bulging through the gossamer thin material of the dress he'd clad her in, brown eyes glowering with hate, teeth gnashing behind the black rubber strap that subdued her mouth. The chair was bolted to the floor. Her feet were chained to the chair. Her movement was restricted. He wasn't ready for her yet. A fist to the face, she slumped, head lolling loosely over her chest, to the right of the teacher, in the center of a long, abandoned warehouse. Another dressed table, another pair of chairs, and terrified captive. A puddle of urine, not blood. On the floor around her feet, Tucker fished a lighter from his pocket as he stepped around the corpse of bleeding Evelyn, lit the wick of the candle dagger protruding from a chrome scabbard. Lighter, back in pocket, he took hold of the rubber gag around the girl's head, pulled it off, relishing the snap as it came loose. "Please," she said, all wild, rabbit eyes and mascara-smeared face. "Don't hurt me. I'll do anything. I promise. Anything." He drew a well-practiced smile onto his goatee-framed jaw and slid into the seat opposite his date, the blonde in the ivory white dress, whose curls hung loose around her face, and whose name was displayed on a sticker. "Mandy," he announced, spreading his hands to greet her and bowing theatrically. "So good to see you. I was delighted to hear you wanted to meet me again. I believe you had some thoughts on escapable fate. Red rum." "Cut!" Leonard shouted, snapping the movie slate shut, dizzy with the relief that comes after the end of a shoot. "Thanks so much, Francis. You're good to go." "No, thank you, Lenny," Francis Keaton replied, shaking Leonard's hand. "I hope we meet again." "Me too. Good luck with your Nespresso adverts." "Where's Liliana?" Leonard called out to Travis, who shrugged his shoulders. "Travis, you reek of whiskey. It's called method acting. I had to do it all the time for Streetcar." "Ah, there you are." Liliana Hoyt, who seemed to be winning every acting award going, was grabbed by Leonard and manhandled by two of the producers onto the set. "Hey!" she screamed. "Get off me!" "You could have dressed up," Leonard said, as Liliana got thrown onto the bed. "Actually, it's fine. Just pull the comforter over her." One of the producers threw some rope around her hands before tying them to the headboard. "Leonard, what the fuck is going on? Where's Margot?" "What about her?" The same producer silenced Liliana, her face bluing in mute appeal with a strip of duct tape. Suddenly, her legs were flailing, writhing, kicking, helpless in the face of the director's conspiratorial will. And action. An unsteady Travis walked onto set, holding a chainsaw, its roar drowning out Liliana's muffled howls. where its teeth kissed her leg. Blood. First a trickle, and then a surge began to mist the whole set. Travis, stop. Margot Devine, the actress who had claimed the starring role, walked in at that very moment. Is everything okay? Liliana called me about an extra scene. She clapped her hands to her face in horror once she saw Liliana's dismembered limbs. Oh my God. Please, detective. I don't want to watch it anymore, pleaded Leonard, turning his head away from the footage. Detective Montrose switched the computer off before turning his attention back to Leonard, whose face was still blank with anxiety. You do know how this looks, don't you, Mr. Leary? Montrose said. Yes, of course I do. I mean, it's there on screen for all to see. You directing Mr. Waterman to saw Ms. Hoyt in half. It was a prop. Okay. Montrose wrote this down. And this was for your movie, was it? Yes. A prison without walls? Yes, Leonard replied begrudgingly. You know, it took 2 weeks at a writing camp in Prague to come up with that. For a moment, Leonard felt it was just him and the detective at the center of the universe, the tape recorder and folders props, and the light bulb swinging pendulum-like above, illuminating the room with an unwelcome light, only there for an added theatrical frisson. Mr. Leary, I'm confused, to say the least, Montrose said. Not one of you has a motive against Ms. Hoyt. Can we please just rewind, going back from Ms. Hoyt's death to the day you started? What, again? Please? If you wouldn't mind. 24th October, 3 weeks into filming, after 10 seconds of looking furiously for Travis, I found him perched on the banquet in the corner, his arms and legs splayed across the leather. It reminded of that scene in Pulp Fiction when Pumpkin and Honey Bunny ransack the diner. Travis fit the aesthetic perfectly. Even though he was a star of the stage, he could well have been a vagrant. Sorry, I was hungry, he said, like a naughty kid, with a chocolate mustache and a half-eaten banana split in front of him. Would you like anything? No, I'm fine. I can't stay long. Travis's hair was incredibly greasy, striking that unfortunate balance between being neither curly nor straight. Jesus, your breath reeks, Travis. The scent was a mix of red wine, cheroots, and patchouli, all rolled into one. Anyway, I think you know why I'm here. Do I? Yes, Travis, you do. It's about your wife, Margot. I don't have a wife. Oh my God. In the movie, Travis. Oh, yeah. Sorry. Margot and James McClane, played by Liliana and Travis, began life as a vision of cold, jodhpur-wearing elitism. But when they went bankrupt, were forced to downsize and move across from the Feldmans, whose marriage they ended up shattering. Liliana dropped quite the bomb the other day, I continued. Travis furrowed his eyebrows. Sorry, who? Liliana. She plays your wife, Travis. Jesus Christ. Oh, okay. Sorry. I don't get involved with the other actors. Holding my nose so as not to inhale any more alcohol breath, I tried one more time to get through to him. Liliana wondered if you, as her husband, would kill her in the script. You're the cuckolded alcoholic in the marriage, so it's completely plausible. Oh, that's fine, Travis said, the red wine talking. Really? It would require you to film some extra scenes. Are you available next week? Yes, great. Thanks. I gave him a slap on the shoulder. She says it's because she doesn't want any trouble, but she wants to be a main character. Audiences love murder. I think that's the problem with movies these days. You don't have to explain yourself, Travis reassured me. Let's kill this bitch. 22nd October. My muscles coiled as soon as I caught sight of her. Liliana, who I am pretty sure was my least favorite, which was no mean feat, had called me unexpectedly to run through some things. And I got the feeling it wasn't to discuss the movie. It never is. The restaurant we had agreed to meet in was an upscale eatery on the fringes of the town center, the sort of place reserved for illicit liaisons and big ultimatums. I knew Liliana spent all her time as an actress, if she wasn't wielding an arc on the silver screen in places like these, possessing the sought-after elixir that wangles 14-course taster, meals and corners tuxedos businessmen into the nooks of dingy bars. Thanks for agreeing to this, Leonard, she said in her native southern twang, her brazen authenticity chording a jarring note against the coy contentment of the restaurant. Liliana was rakish and spidery, her face so pale as though made of reconstituted porcelain, the cruel origami of her arms stretched to hug me. No, really. Thank you. Have you ordered? I haven't. Great, she said, perusing the menu. You know, I haven't got long, Liliana. I have to dash. It's Lily. And what do you mean you have to dash? You're such a bad liar. What? Let's see how convincingly you can lie about where you were last week. When you saw me and Margot having a go at each other, she picked up the knife as though she was poised to dissect me. Why are you looking so worried? The waiter arrived, absolving me of this question. He took our orders, looking askance at Liliana as he did so, probably surprised at how underdressed she was. He would be right. It was clear Liliana didn't fit in here. It came to herald a changing of the guard. No longer were places like these populated by the jewel-draped dames who held an ice-bedded coupe in one palm of their hand and the piqued interest of their stupid director in the other. But now, overhauled by a new generation, one of them being Liliana, a raven-haired, new-age Janet Lee. I'll try and be quick, she said, sipping her wine. But Margot Devine, fucking Margot Devine, is not a subject I can discuss without completely going batshit crazy. I hope you understand. I don't know what you mean, Liliana. Oh, drop the act, Leonard. You know exactly what I mean. What? You saw us. I saw you. Saw us. What? Oh my God. Don't even try to. When we stopped filming, Me and Margot went to... And you, I don't know what you're... Look, I don't care. I know you're lying. All I wanted to tell you is that I know you. I've met directors like you before. A zillion of them. This was a lie. Liliana's showreel was suspiciously short. And I know what gets people like you going, she continued. I stared at her with my eyes wide open, loudly glugging my wine, so the silence she left was even more pronounced. Money, she explained, as though this wasn't obvious. Of course it's money, right? And what's that gotta do with Margot? Haha, it has everything to do with Margot. Liliana leaned in, her breath hot on my cheek. I didn't want to have to tell you this. Obviously, I didn't. Not even my mom knows. But Margot and I, we had a thing some years ago. Liliana bit her lip defiantly, numb with inexpressible loathing. I don't think you can call it a thing, to be honest. But Twitter will have different ideas. It didn't even last a year. I have to say, I'm surprised. I improvised, hiding my face with my glass. Margot's a big star. Exactly. Margot Devine, darling of the acting world, splashed all over the front pages because she's been having an affair with another woman. And not just any woman. The next Neve Campbell, of course. Liliana, I don't... You know who'll come out of this the worst, Leonard. Not me. No. Not even Margot. But you. No one will watch your movie. No one will care. No one will ever want to hire you again. The prospect, although shocking, yet entirely plausible, was a terrifying one. What are you suggesting? I asked. Look, I know this is gonna sound mad, because I know we're so late into the shoot, and I know how hard you've worked on the script, but how about we kill Margot's character off? I just think this is what the script needs. So you want to kill Margot off? Yes. You can give her a big send-off if you like. But I just don't think Margot belongs in this movie. Okay, I said, summoning the waiter for more wine. I'll see what I can do. 14th of October, 2 weeks into filming, I had known these people for just over a month. And I already knew that they were the worst people I had ever met. Margot was a man-hating sociopath. Liliana was a man-eating snake. Travis was a narcissistic man-child. And Francis was simply a very annoying man. Lenny, you with us? Francis called out. I've got to go in 20 minutes. Can we wrap this up, please? Sure. I made my way back to the studio. The custom-made house for the movie, inhabited by Grace and Roger Feldman, played by Margot Devine and Francis Keaton, respectively, was gorgeously uniform and pastel. Something even Martha Stewart would be proud of. Their marriage was literally like something from a TV commercial. Something rehearsed, shot, and then left in a studio. Something always destined for the snap of a director's slate. It was so hollow, so unreal, that someone could scrawl over it with a black marker pen and no one would notice. The Feldmans lived in a world full of Minnie and Roman Castevets, where everything was dystopian and rabid bunny happy, where apples seemed to pick themselves, where lawnmowers began without prompt, and where babies slept without protest. And that's a wrap, I announce, weak with relief. I'll see you guys tomorrow, okay? In what was my only break of the day, I go for a cigarette and watch the world go by. The town, a mass of either failing or fledgling shops, of laundromats and fried chicken, was a buckle in the belt of dusty, apple-knocking America. A montage of sandy browns and russet reds that quite happily elided into one long sepia smudge. And then a shout, a scream, something that threatened to disrupt the even tenor of my walk. Just leave me alone, they spat, the voice emanating from a woman's head in the distance. What do you expect me to do? The blonde girl replied. I inched forward before doubling back when I realized who they were. Margot and Liliana. Look, I know neither of us could have foreseen this, Liliana said. But I don't want you trying to talk to me in front of everyone, okay? I think it's fine, Lily. Getting the feeling this conversation wasn't something I should be hearing. I backed up against the wall and bowed my head. Everything had seemed so civil on set up until now. Then again, it was to be expected. Actors could behave like little children. No, it's not fine, Margot, continued Liliana, spitting fury. And to make matters worse, they've given me the same fucking name as you. That'll be all over TMZ when they find out about us. Lily, please, do not touch me. Honestly, I swear to God, after we do this, if you come near me again, then I will call the police. Leave me alone. 9th September, the table read. I hated an ensemble cast. This time, luckily, I only had to contend with 4 different personalities. But it was the personalities that was the difficult bit. The 4 elected professionals, the starlet, the treader of boards, the scream queen, and the smarmy one you see on Nespresso adverts, were due at lunchtime, a pretext to pick at finger food and bitch about the agent they all once had in common. It was when I finished putting the food and drinks together that Margot Devine, the first to try my smorgasbord of bread rolls and oil dips, decided to arrive. With her eyes in some sort of half squint, forever suspicious of any gathering of men or any errant camera, Margot had her hair scraped back into a lick of blonde and was wearing an outsize puffer jacket. I pictured her getting bundled into a Land Rover by her press agent, the jacket pulled over her shoulder blades with perma-pincered fingers, moving as fast as her praying mantis legs would permit, like a Weinstein protege whose daily intake amounted to nothing more than an iceberg lettuce leaf and a cube of blue cheese. Margot, hi. I greeted her awkwardly, kissing her on both cheeks, feeling the shocking realness of her bones. "There's someone in the elevator coming up," she said, upturning her nose. "I'm not sure he's a part of this. I think he's the one who does the Nespresso adverts." "Francis Keaton?" "Oh yes, that's the one." "Ah," I said, sawing Francis at the door. Speak of the devil. First shooting to international fame in his early 20s, much in the same mold as Leonardo DiCaprio. Francis Keaton was the nation's sweetheart. With orange skin and one remaining tuft of hair, he was clearly still clinging onto the vestiges of youth. But as he was Francis Delano Keaton, the perfect riposte to any insult, he was most definitely forgiven. One dimply smile from his much-pinched cheek, and you would just swoon. "So, who else we waiting for then?" he asked in his frothy drawl. "Just two more." "Who are they?" "It's not Meryl Streep, is it?" No, not Meryl, unfortunately. It's Travis Waterman and Liliana Hoyt. Ah, Liliana, the woman of the moment. "Liliana's coming?" Margot asked, tweaking her sleeve. "Yes." "Oh, is there a problem?" "Oh no, we just haven't seen each other since the whole cabin in the woods debacle." "Oh yes," Francis laughed. "Right, bloodbath, wasn't it?" "Ah," I beamed, breaking the awkward silence that came thereafter. "I think that's them now." With an A-list swagger she could only mimic, Liliana Hoyt entered at that exact moment beside Travis Waterman. Liliana, making her name through low-budget art house movies, could not be more different from Travis, who was securely established as the doyen of theater, earning his first Tony nomination for his performance in Othello. I wondered how they would react when they would learn that they were going to be playing a married couple, which reminded me, the script I would have them read, written by myself, of course, was tentatively titled A Prison Without Walls. It was about a married couple in the 1950s, the sort to hold Tupperware parties and send their children to elocution lessons, who find themselves reevaluating their priorities when a new couple moves in across the road. "Hello, Leonard. Good to see you again." We had never met before. "Good evening, Travis," I said, showing them to their seats. The five of us arranged ourselves in the most curious of configurations, with Margot and Travis at one end, and Francis and Liliana at the other. "So, I hope everyone's got the right script," I said, taking charge. "Yes," Travis responded, remarkably quick for someone who had all the zeal of a narcoleptic. "But it says here my character's an alcoholic. Is that—" No. James falls off a wagon when he learns his wife, played by Liliana, is cheating on him. Is that? Yep, it was an awkward subject. Everyone knew Travis was an alcoholic ever since his stint in Cat on a hot tin roof. "At least it's not me doing the cheating," Francis quipped. "Actually, you are," I corrected. Roger cheats on his wife with Liliana's character. No one thought it appropriate to respond. TMZ had a helicopter above Keaton's mansion for months after he ordered a prostitute to his home while his wife was on vacation. Liliana craned forward, opening her mouth to speak. Leonard. It says here, my character's called Margot. Margot. Yes, it's spelled differently. Well, I hope you don't confuse us, Margot interjected. Everyone shot a sideways glance at Margot, sulking in the corner. So, I said, slapping my knees. Shall we begin? It was finally time. We all took a sharp intake of breath before turning the first page. Francis was still smiling. Liliana was still staring at me. Travis was still dwelling on his character arc. And Margot was left to quietly fume about the fact that her namesake was played by her archenemy, the care and feeding of monsters. Via Sol looked around the mansion with distaste. She didn't like being here, and she certainly didn't like what she had heard about the monster who used to live here. Not that she put much credence in the old tales that some of the more senior members of the Lollipop Guild talked about. Those wizened relics of the past had many tales to tell. All the stories outrageous, and all the events sounding just a little too fantastic to believe. Via poked around the foyer and the living area, marveling at the size of the place and grimacing at the thick coat of grime and dust that covered every surface. She had drawn back every curtain on the ground floor, yet the area remained dark and suffocating. Curious, the high, vaulted ceilings spiraled upwards, seemingly without end, but the claustrophobic feeling stayed. The ancient wood creaked and groaned with every step she took, voicing its complaint in sonorous, funereal tones. She wanted to leave right now, but she had a prospective client. This place had been on the books for over 100 years, and getting it sold would be a major coup for her. She had visions of a corner office and a hefty bonus. The realtor overcame her fears and waited. But she waited outside, a wicked witch indeed. What ridiculous tripe. Franklin Baumgartner looked around the mansion. Via thought his eyes looked dead. But, she reasoned, that could be the effect of the poor light in the mansion. His assistant, a Miss Holcomb, also had a lifeless look about her. Their size bothered Via. The man towered over everyone in the land, standing almost 6 feet tall. The woman was a giant as well. Their attire was odd, and their actions startling. Miss Holcomb, take some notes, Baumgartner snapped. Miss Holcomb dutifully took out a notepad and readied herself for the onslaught to come. Replace the windows, double-paned, insulated with argon gas. Make that triple-paned, American-made. Always buy American-made, Miss Holcomb. None of that Chinese shit. Get some people in here to reinforce the floorboards. They squeak like a bitchy wife. Cleaning crew. Make that cruise. American cruise? Miss Holcomb pushed her glasses back on her face and peered up at her boss. No, hire the illegals that come over here. They'll work cheap and do a good job. Remember, Miss Holcomb, buy American. Hire foreign. Got it, sir, Miss Holcomb said. She wrote rapidly and then paused, waiting for more. Contact Kate Mueller in Chicago. Have her come in and furnish this place. Spare no expense. It's a fucking mausoleum right now. Get Halliburton to give me a call. I hear wolves out there. He's good at killing things. Gardeners, of course. Lots of them. The land has gone to hell. Oh, and I saw some beehives out there. Find me a beekeeper. If the bees aren't producing honey, we'll exterminate them. The roof needs to be checked. Baumgartner went on like this for some time. Miss Holcomb wrote furiously, nodding occasionally, and staying 6 feet behind her employer. Via Saul didn't show it, but she was confused and alarmed. She had never heard of the places mentioned. America, Canada, Chicago. The man also used language that was unfamiliar to her, especially the word beginning with a foo sound, or bitchy. Maybe it's their way of saying itchy. And maybe the foo word is a term of endearment. Via was snapped out of her reverie by Baumgartner's stentorian voice. Miss Soul? Hey, you still with us? Via looked up and almost stood at attention. Of course, yes. So, the price? You have it listed as 133 lollipops. That must be a typo. Baumgartner frowned at her. He didn't approve of sloppy work. No, sir, that's the price. But we can negotiate. Lollipops? Yes, sir. I'm assuming that you can pay in lollipops. Hell no, missy. We use good old American dollars. The best currency in the world, I'll have you know. Lollipops? What the hell kind of lollipop do you require? Are they lined with gold? Well, no. That is, they're just lollipops. Baumgartner looked at his assistant impassively. He blinked and shook his head. Miss Holcomb waited patiently for something to write down. Show me, Baumgartner said. Via nodded, confused as to why someone needed to see what was widely considered the coin of the realm. She went outside to her horse and buggy, retrieving a couple of lollipops. She went back inside the mansion, not easy in her mind. Baumgartner stared at them for some time. He inspected them closely, twirled them in his fingers, and even sniffed them. He handed one to Miss Holcomb, who mimicked her boss's actions. Am I to understand that these lollipops are made with sugar? Nothing else? Just sugar and some natural coloring, I think. I'm not sure. The Lollipop Guild makes them, and they guard their secrets carefully. Baumgartner nodded. Although confused by the method of payment, he didn't hesitate to take advantage of the situation. What'll you take for these lollipops? Cash? Goods? Baumgartner eyed Via closely, noting her body language. He was successful in part because of his ability to read people. Well, I was going to purchase some new clothes after work. Food for the winter. Grain for the horse, Via said. She was nervous. The conversation about money bothered her. No one talked about money here. No one at all. Baumgartner considered what the realtor said. He whispered to his assistant. She nodded lightly and wrote something down on her notepad. Tell you what, Miss Soul, I'll bring you a new horse when I come back, if you give me one of these. Via gasped. A new horse would normally cost 7 lollipops. She tried to keep her composure. The man is an idiot. However, I could use a new horse. Poor old Rusty is getting old. And maybe I could get a little more out of this dolt. A new horse is acceptable, but I think I'd want a little more. Maybe throw in 100 kilos of grain for the new horse. Baumgartner accepted quickly. The woman's a dolt, selling this place for 133 lollipops, and all she wants is a new horse and some feed. Jesus, this is gonna be easy. We'll be back next week. Have the papers ready to sign. I'll have the, payment in full, Baumgartner said. He didn't even try to haggle over the price. He was starting to love this exchange rate. Baumgartner was as good as his word. He paid for the mansion and bought Via a new horse, along with supplying her with an impressive amount of grain for the horse. Still, Via was disturbed. The stranger found his way to her homeland. There were tales about a farm girl who had done this, but that was nothing more than a story that the old ones told. Baumgartner was indeed from another land, Kansas. His Aunt Elle had given him what was left of the family farm, and he sold it quickly, at a ridiculously low price. His aunt was dead. The farm was not a money-maker, and he hated farming. The only thing he kept was a pair of silver slippers, for they entranced him. In the light, they turned into a fiery, ruby-red color. Aunt Elle also told him that he could transport himself to a magical land by wearing the slippers and wishing himself to this nebulous place. The slippers were far too small to wear, and he didn't believe such nonsense anyway. One night, after drinking in excess, a particularly cheap and poor quality of a Chianti, he tried it. Frank found himself in the middle of a poppy field, staring at a city that seemed entirely made of green crystals. He took one of the crystals and closed his eyes again, wishing himself back home. Emeralds. The green crystals were emeralds. He made several trips like this and became rich. He also discovered streets made of gold bricks. He helped himself to plenty of these as well. When he returned, he found that the gold bricks and the emeralds had been replaced. Frank had no qualms about taking more emeralds and more gold from this place. None at all. Frank Baumgartner had found Oz. The inhabitants of the land that Baumgartner invaded were becoming unhappy with their new neighbor. He had a landing strip built for his private jet. The people thought it was a monstrous steel dragon and fled every time it landed or departed. The same emotions arose when Baumgartner drove his vehicle. To them, it was nothing more than an iron terror roaming through their land. Queen Ozma demanded that the stranger leave. He refused. She had no recourse to his refusal. No one had ever defied the queen before, so she was at a loss as to what to do. They had no police force, for there was no crime. They had no standing army, for they had no enemies. Until now, Baumgartner paid well in lollipops. This became a problem, a huge problem. The economy was turned upside down and inside out. Munchkins and Winkies, with newfound wealth, invaded Emerald City and bought up desirable plots of land and built houses. Baumgartner built several yellow-bricked roads that led to Emerald City, and the flood of country people to the city was unsustainable. The new royalty had been, just a short time before, farmers and craftsmen. The Lollipop Guild had been decimated by the influx of lollipops from Baumgartner. Inflation ran rampant. And then a recession hit. Everyone felt its effects, and the people of all 4 quadrants of the land found themselves struggling to survive. Baumgartner didn't care. He was rich in America, but here he was a god. He controlled the lands, the supply chains, the very fabric of life. Poverty became the new normal. We have to do something. Vaya slammed her fist on the table. The Munchkins looked at her with surprise and consternation. She had never been so demonstrative. Via Sol had always been the epitome of grace and charm. Goru stood up, though it made little difference in his height relative to everyone else. He was short, even for a Munchkin, but he commanded respect. The eldest member of the Lollipop Guild had been Goro for the past 70 years, and his word meant something. I have a solution, but you aren't going to like it, he said. A quietness overtook the room. If Gora said that it would be displeasing, then it would be very displeasing. The council braced itself. Goro outlined his plan. Everyone was horrified, but they agreed to it. Effie sensed the Munchkin well before he came into sight. She sniffed the air and smelled fear, desperation, sadness. Goro stopped short when he saw Effie. It had been 20 years since she had been banished to the edge of Munchkin Land. Although he had voted against the banishment, he still felt a thrill of fear. Effie was dangerous. All her kind were dangerous. What brings the great and powerful Gora to my humble shack? Effie picked up a snake and stroked it gently before putting it back on the ground and giving it a shove with her toe. The snake slithered off into the underbrush, looking for a meal. A stranger from the outer lands. A bad person, Effie. Very bad. We need your help, Goro said, looking down He was afraid to meet Effie's eyes. "I have no quarrel with you, Gora. You didn't vote against me when I was banished. But why should I help? I was exiled because of my grandmother." Goro nodded. She was right. She had no reason to help. "But I will," Effie said softly, "because the stranger has something of mine." Goro looked at her, surprised. "You know about the stranger. I may be restricted to the edge of the desert, but I hear things," she said. "Because the animals tell me." Goro believed her. Effie's grandmother understood the animals. "I'll come to the council next week, when it's over. I'll want something in return, though." Goro nodded. He was empowered to agree to almost anything. "What?" Effie looked at Gora and smiled. It was a beautiful smile, so unlike her grandmother's wicked leer. "My grandmother's old house." Goro expected this. He nodded, and then he left as quickly as possible. The edge of the desert frightened him, and Effie frightened him most of all. He thought of a saying he had heard long ago: "Needs must when the devil drives." He would wonder, years later, who the devil really was. Effie flew above the trees on her umbrella, scanning the countryside. She knew the area well, for she had been raised in Winky country. Her old house looked different, modern and bright. She hated it. A portly man came outside and looked around, hands on hips. Effie's tremendous sight allowed her to see him clearly. He had a mug look on his face. Odd clothes covered his portly frame, and he was smoking a cigar. Effie banked sharply and flew toward the man. He finally spotted her and stared at her in surprise and fear. She saw his eyes widen. He screamed just as her umbrella penetrated his heart. The umbrella settled gently on the ground as Effie stepped off. She strode to the man and took the briefcase. She had what she wanted. She had what belonged to her. "We have to do something," Vaya said miserably. She didn't slam her hand on the table, as she had done all those years ago. But the tone of her voice revealed her desperation. Goro and the rest of the council agreed. Effie had been a hero 20 years ago when she killed the giant stranger and everyone else in her grandmother's old house. The land was freed from the bonds of American capitalism and its monstrous ways. Now, however, she was as her grandmother had been, wicked and controlling. The flying monkeys were back, as were the giant white wolves and the huge black bees. They had gotten so used to smallish wolves and gentle honeybees that the new, more dangerous versions were even more frightening than ever. "What can we do? We made a deal, and she took advantage." Goro talked quietly, as usual, but his voice was tinged with defeat. He saw no way out. "It's like the old days," he continued, "when her grandmother ruled Winkyland. But worse. Effie seems to have a vendetta against us. So, we're sunk. Back to the way things were in the old days, and no stupid farm girl to bail us out. another member said. Where did she come from? Kansas? Where the hell is that? Vaya was willing to travel past the deserts if need be. Somewhere over the rainbows, Vaya. Somewhere we can't reach. Effie sat in her darkened mansion and smiled, stroking the fur of a wolf and listening to the angry buzzing of the black bees flitting about her abode. She had reclaimed her family power. The witch still remembered the day her mother died. She had been behind a curtain when the incident occurred, watching the events unfold. When the strange girl doused her mother with water, she gasped. Her mother melted in front of her eyes. Effie had never seen such a gruesome sight in her life. But that wasn't the end of the bad news. She had been banished to the edge of the desert, though the council that banished her knew full well that she would, in all probability, die from this. The only member to vote in her favor was Gora. Effie, though, had been taught how to survive by her mother. She flourished. Her hate grew. And then another stranger showed up, and with the magical slippers, her mother's slippers, and the last remaining source of all witchy power. Just a pair of shoes, silver. But they fit her feet perfectly, almost like they were made for her now that she was the only living witch in Oz. She could rule all the lands, not just Winky Land. There was a new ruler of the land, and she wasn't about to forget what the inhabitants had done to her or her mother. Effie scanned the skies for flying houses. It wouldn't do to neglect the lessons from the past. She grabbed her umbrella and took off across the land, flying low and fast, observing her domain. Effie was on her way to Emerald City to depose the queen. She has a date with the point of my umbrella today. I look forward to the smell of royal blood spilled on the streets of Emerald City. My only regret is that she can't melt like my mother did. Effie flew on over poppy fields and verdant landscape. Evil had returned to Oz. The monster they all feared was a woman with silver slippers on her feet and hate in her heart. The queen has an expiration date. Evil has no such restriction. Night shift. It all started one wintry night. I was waiting to cross a busy intersection on Oxford Street in London's West End. My workday had just ended, and it felt good to be out of that stuffy office. I had been feeling warm all day and hoped I wasn't coming down with a cold or flu that regularly permeated the office environment at this time of year. Joining the throngs of people heading for the underground trains on their way home, I breathed in the crisp air that usually had a ruffled chill to every month of January, and was looking forward to getting home, switching on the telly, and putting my feet up for the evening. Whether it was the cold night air invigorating my lungs, or just getting away from my desk, I felt a heightened sensation bordering on elation. Even my sense of hearing had become acute to conversations in the crowd around me. More interestingly, my stomach began to rumble, like it hadn't eaten for days. But I distinctly remember eating a large portion of steak tartare for lunch, watching the animated green walking figure appear at the traffic light opposite. I stepped onto the road, but something immediately caught my attention. The people crowding around me were glowing. That is, their necks were glowing crimson. Even the ones wearing scarves appeared to be radiantly red, like they had twinkling Christmas lights wrapped around their heads. A sudden downpour of heavy, wet rain brought me back to my senses, which was fortunate for me, as I was about to kiss a strange woman's neck. This surrealistic impulse that I almost acted out panicked me. Never had I been attracted to a woman so much that I felt like blatantly accosting her on a street. I was happily married, for goodness sake, and not interested in other women. The more I searched for a reasonable explanation, the more I broke out in a cold sweat. It had alarmed me to a level of fright and flight, so I rushed headlong down the escalator stairs at Bond Street Station and jumped onto the Jubilee line to take me home. However, it was rush hour, and I found myself stuffed into a train carriage like sardines in a tin. That's when further urges tormented me. I could smell a sweet, metallic pungency all around me, and it was intoxicating, alluring, and simply irresistible. I realized I needed to control myself, because part of me argued it was immoral to feel the strange growing urges building up inside me. So I closed my eyes and chanted an unrecognizable verse in my head in an attempt to distract me from my pulsating desires. It didn't help, because the words I recited only increased a compelling hunger that needed immediate feeding. Feel the hunger deep inside, a tormenting thirst to be denied when the scent of blood is in the air. Eat here, drink there, gorge everywhere, unable to control my urges. I found myself exiting the train 2 stops early at Swiss Cottage. The rain had stopped and left a misty haze dampening the ground. Car headlights cut through the fog, creating halo effects around pedestrians crossing the road, making them look like they were glowing from head to foot. It was best that I could not see clearly. It would speed my passage home without any temptations. Taking a shortcut down an old alleyway that connected to a quicker way home, I hoped to shave several minutes off my hike. The alleyway was poorly lit, with lamp posts approximately 50 meters apart, most of them inoperative from damage done to them. As I picked up my pace, I heard a sound like someone slipping on a wet surface, then a cracking sound like a hard part of them had hit the cement pathway. A yell, followed by an expletive, told me that the person I was descending on had fallen and hurt themselves. "Are you okay, miss?" I genuinely asked on my approach. "I've cut my chin. the young woman stated. "Do you have any Kleenex tissues or paper towels?" It was then that the enticing aroma of freshly released blood wafted under my nose. Gently cupping her chin, I leaned in and "What are you doing?" the policeman demanded to know as he shined his bright flashlight on me. I was frozen in place, my eyes the only moving part darting towards the constable, then darting back at the young woman whose chin I was tightly attached to with my mouth. Logic escaped me, but flippancy did not. Quickly recalling something my mother used to say at the dinner table, I blurted it out with clenched teeth. "I would like to explain, Constable, but my mother always told me to never talk with my mouth full." Either the constable had no sense of humor, or he was tired of dealing with flippant replies to his standard police inquiries. He pulled out his truncheon and began to attack me about my head with his nightstick. One swift rip of his neck with pointy, sharp claws I didn't know existed until that moment caused him to slump to the wet ground in dead weight. Witnessing this unexpected act, the young woman screamed a blood-curdling shriek that sounded like music to my highly acute hearing. Attempting to escape, I counted to 3. Then an impressive light of foot sprint had me overtake her in seconds, where I dispatched her to the same place as that bullying policeman. Needless to say, I was horrified at my involuntary actions and needed to get home as quick as I could. I managed to cover the last mile in 2 minutes, flat. Another surprise that shocked me, because until that moment, any form of exercise I participated in, running was never my best activity. "Hello, darling," my Eloise greeted me as I unlocked the door to the safety of our welcoming abode. "How was your day?" Without a word, I unintelligibly grunted and shook my shoulders before hurrying up the stairs to the bathroom. "You okay?" Eloise called up the stairs. I was too shaken to answer. How could I explain a happening so bizarre and an anomaly so incomprehensible? It was too surreal for words, but remarkably, it had left me tingling with an unexpected surge of excitement. "Don't forget the Fortescues are coming for dinner, darling. They insisted on a weekday. Some money-making opportunity they want to present to us." Freddie Fortescue was always scheming to make an extra buck here and there, since his wealthy, stuck-up parents had practically disowned him for spending all his trust fund on get-rich-quick schemes. He had mentioned this one in passing the last time we got together, but I told him that pyramid schemes only made money for those at the top. It was obvious that saying no to Freddie was like saying no to happiness. So he probably had his wife, Bunty, put pressure on Eloise to allow him to pitch the idea over a Wednesday night dinner tete-a-tete. The very night I seemed to be at a disadvantage in mental faculties. Damp from the evening's events, I sat on the edge of the bathtub and grabbed a towel from the rail. then proceeded to dry my face and hair of the excess blood splashed on me during my outrage. My body trembled at the memory of what I had just done, and a soft, painful cry escaped my lungs. Moments later, the bathroom door swung open, and Eloise rushed in, a look of worried concern on her face. "What's wrong, darling? Are you okay?" "I don't know where to start," I mumbled. "It's okay," Eloise softly reassured me. "Calm yourself." Tears filled my dry eyes. Something horrific had happened to me. I felt like my insides were remapping my DNA. "I feel like my body is changing, Ellen. Like I'm a teenager again, going through puberty. It's such a strange feeling, bordering on an energizing sensation of euphoria. I'm sweating, but I don't feel hot." Gently caressing my chin until our eyes locked in comforting gazes, Elle pressed the back of her other hand against my forehead. "You do feel rather on the cold side, darling. I have done something horrible, Elle." "Come on," Eloise requested. "A nice glass of red downstairs will set you to rights. You can tell me all about it after you change clothes." Ushering me from behind, Eloise nudged me from the bathroom. I felt both confused and elated at the same time. But how would I be able to explain it to Elle? Snapping me out of my inward thoughts, Elle held up the cravat she wanted me to wear. Then produced the most exquisite red velvet jacket while helping me on with it. It was a tad kitsch, but she has always loved seeing me dressed up in 1970s Hugh Hefner-styled clothing. She said seeing me in a velour way caused her to purr like a kitten, and that it always added a little excitement to the evening. Besides, the Fortescue's sense of fashion always seemed to tease at the edge of tackiness. It would be rude not to indulge our guests on this dark, wet, and atmospheric night. No sooner had Elle dressed me, Freddie and Bunty were ringing our doorbell. As I opened the door to let them in, I decided to put on a brave face and try to act normal. This was helped by Freddie and Bunty gliding into the hallway, dressed in a similar 70s revival fashion. Good company for my velvet jacket. Freddie's wide lapel suit with platform shoes made him look taller than his small stature. But Bunty looked deliciously attractive in a rainbow-striped halter top and brown flared pants. Luckily for her, the faux fox fur coat she wore as she entered our home had kept her cozy and warm in the outside fog of the evening. It was a much-needed distraction from my earlier experience, so I told myself to just get through dinner, then confess all to my loving Eloise. Throughout the evening, conversation from our guests had been jovial, but I remained slightly reserved, still trying to come to grips with my sudden change of character. It wasn't too noticeable, as Freddie took center stage and entertained us with quips and jokes of an era gone by. You know, the borderline racist and sexist one-liners that matched his dress code. Bunty shyly giggled at Freddy's off-color humor, but managed to correct him when he went too far. Eloise had seated me next to Bunty, and opposite us, she sat next to Freddy. Soup was the starter. However, my appetite had escaped me, so I didn't partake in eating any of it. Trying to suppress flashbacks of the evening's earlier slaughter, coupled with my adrenaline level still high, acted as a natural hunger suppressant. Eloise noticed my introverted behavior and flashed a concerned look at me across the dining table, but I smiled and nodded that I was okay. During the main meal, Eloise served up some medium-rare fried steaks with pommes frites that, although smelled enticing, I just played with mine until I became bored. So, topping up everyone's wine glass, I settled into listening to Freddy open his sales pitch on why we should attend his pyramid parties. He explained how getting in early guaranteed us a big payday, and that we could repeat the process multiple times. Illegal as his idea was, it was tempting nonetheless. I was on the verge of agreeing when all my senses suddenly heightened beyond containment. It was as if I could hear Bunty's pulse beating like a drum struck methodically in cadent rhythm. Chillingly, it sent me into a form of stalking mode, instantly attracting my devoted attention, beguiling me with its seducing sound. I soon realized it was the incantation of Bunty's blood being pumped through her soft veins. Studying her pulsating neck closely, I was immediately overcome with the oddest desire to kiss her. So I leaned in toward her and, "Darling," Eloise abruptly demanded my attention. "Where are your manners? You should always feed the guests first." I turned my head sideways to respond to Elle, and was bemused at the expression on Freddy's face. A look of sheer shock and horror stretched across his entire expression. As I removed my face from snuggling into Bunty's neck, she unexpectedly fell face down into her caramel flan that Eloise had served for dessert, staining it blood red with every pumping beat of her open jugular vein. I was flabbergasted at the sight before me, but before I could cry in shock, and more importantly, before Freddy could run screaming from the house, Eloise quickly bit down onto his large-collared, silk-shirted neck, draining him of a large amount of life-giving blood. Not to be upstaged, he too imitated Bunty's reaction and slumped with his nose buried in his dessert. "Before you freak out," Eloise halted my panic. "We need to talk." My gut reaction was to scream. However, the satisfying sensation that coursed through every fiber of my body sat me relaxed back into the comfort of my chair. Everything became clearer. This was to be the new normal, my newly formed ideology argued. What surprised me the most was my Eloise. It was obvious that she was like me, but had been so for a tad bit longer than I. It was also apparent that she was the one responsible for my predicament. "When did you?" I sincerely inquired. "Sunday night, darling," she replied, cutting me off in mid-question. "Why?" "I'm so sorry, my love. I'm selfish, and I couldn't bear the thought of living through eternity without you." Her candor was admirable, and her expression of love for me was so sweet that I immediately forgave her. She did it out of love, I reasoned, with the lucidity of a madman. However, there was still one question remaining to be answered. "Elle, who turned you?" "Nigel, at the company Christmas party. The one where partners weren't invited?" "Obviously for a reason, darling. The world needs more vampires, apparently. It's all the rage." Somehow, I had missed that memo at my own place of business. Elle's answer certainly explained the increasing numbers of sicky days my colleagues took before never returning to work. It also explained my wife's sudden rush to buy thick black velvet curtains that she kept drawn during daylight hours. I simply thought blocking out the intermittent English sunshine helped ease her migraines. What created a conundrum is that she chose to convert me without any prior discussion, but I suppose that would have been a difficult topic to broach. "Darling, I have some good news and some bad news. The good news is that I will live forever. The bad news is you won't, so I need to bite your neck and drain your blood." I may have run for the hills if she had explained it in that manner. However, the way I felt after ripping through bountiful Bunty's porcelain flesh was too intoxicating to argue with any rational thought. I was now a night crawler, a citizen of the undead. My world had changed. It was up to me to live with it and learn to sleep by day, because from here on out, I was going to have to work the night shift, still trying to process events. I didn't hear the front door being broken in, the heavy sets of footsteps piling into the hallway, and the police helicopter hovering above our roof, shining its blinding searchlight beam through the open curtains. I must have been recognized on my mad dash home at the speed of a fast-moving city car, angry shouts ordering the two of us to lay on the floor face down, accompanied guns pointing directly at us. Eloise remained calm, but I was still processing the intrusion and trying like an idiot to protest at the 8 heavily armed members of the CVS, the counter-vampire squad. "Gentlemen," I began, "couldn't this wait until after dinner? We still haven't opened the port." An over-aggressive policeman, frustrated by my words, hit me in the head with the butt of his assault rifle, but it had no sensory impact on me. He might as well have just blown air in my face. He obviously had not seen what I had done to the last policeman that attacked me. "Darling," Eloise softly called, "it's time." "Time for what, Elle?" "Time for us to find somewhere else to live." In a speedy blur, resembling life at fast-forward viewing, Eloise swiftly overpowered every member of the vampire squad, beheading each one of them before they could react. Once again, I was shocked at the carnage, but in parallel, oh so proud and in awe of my wonderful Elle. In time, I would most likely possess those unworldly skills. But for now, I remained in a state of marvel at her ability to nullify an overwhelming force that had threatened to overpower us. Bravo, Elle. I congratulated her, my compassion for the dead non-existent and my grasp of reality rapidly slipping from any semblance of sanity. Quickly grabbing our coats, Elle pulled me by the hand and led me down the hallway and through our broken front door, turning to take a final look at the home we had to immediately vacate. The whir of the hovering helicopter above our house reminded us that time was of the essence. Putting a loving arm around my beloved Elle, I flipped a defiant, juvenile-inspired middle finger up at the pilot, then guided Elle out into the foggy night. "What now, Jeremy?" Elle sentimentally asked as we fled at top speed to avoid the chopper's searchlight. "Let's eat first," I replied. "I'm starving."